Now remember, this is a story about the seven realms, and we travel through all of the realms on a ship. And the ship is captained by Maritza Lupita Montoya, and she is the brave captain of that ship. There is only one ship in the seven realms, and she is the one that owns that ship. She has sailed all across all of the seven realms and never one time has run into an invisible island. But at this time, she has. Her ship has shipwrecked on this invisible island. How are we ever to get it off? Messina, Maritza, the giant Jared, Katsu, Lady Brooke are all on this island. They need to move the ship away from the beach. Messina and the crew has already fixed the hole that happened when the ship ran aground. They just can't get it off the beach. So they called for Buzz. Buzz changed in, heard Buzz falling into the water and went out and swam to get Buzz, grabbed Buzz, and Buzz changed back from a dragon to a regular person. Mello swam over to the beach and delivered Buzz to Messina because Mello was standing guard at the entrance. And remember, when Mello got back to the entrance, Mello could sense that there was something different about the underwater realm. So meanwhile, back on the island, Messina, with the orb in her hand, whispered to it and said, "We need you now. We need you to come now." And off she sent the orb. No one really knew where it was going, but it flew and it flew. The orb can send messages through all of the realms. Remember, we left Sparky and Sam underneath this island in a dragon lair. Remember, Sparky saved Sam's life by the tears that Sparky shed all over Sam's face and lifeless body. Sparky's been caring for Sam in this hidden dragon's lair so that Sam could be strong enough to battle again. Sparky and Sam turned around and looked at the entrance of the lair and could see the globe coming towards them. The globe stopped, and it was Messina's voice saying, "We need your help. We're on the invisible island. I want you to take some dirt from the lair, and I want you to hold it in your hand, and I want you to sprinkle it over the orb." And Sam did that. And as soon as the sand touched the orb started to move towards the exit of the cave. Sam jumped on Sparky and started to follow the orb because it is the only way to find the invisible island. They had no idea what has been happening because the last thing Sam knew was that Sam was trying to save Sparky and Sparky trying to save Sam. So Sparky and Sam start flying, and they get to the island, and the orb stops at Miss Z. Miss Z takes the orb, and it disappears in her hand. She says to Sam and Sparky, "We need to move the ship. There's a lot of magical things in works right now on this island, and we now need to move the ship away from the island." So they got some rope, and they wrapped the rope around the dragon's neck, as they did before to get to this island. Sparky starts to move and flap, and now the rope is starting to get tighter and tighter. Sam has a hold of the rope as Sam starts to make his wings go in real strong might. You could hear the creaking of the ship, creaking away from the island as Sparky and Sam are moving the ship. What happened after that was incredible. Remember, the invisible island is at the Dire Straits. So as Sparky is flying and pulling the ship away from the island, it's starting to go down the very treacherous, treacherous,
Just
us, treacherous, sorry, Dire Straits. What happened after that was crazy. The island began to move too. The island began to follow the ship, almost as if the ship was a magnet and the island had to follow it. So down the Dire Straits, the island is floating. Meanwhile, back at the underwater realm, Mello comes in through the passage, lifts her head up out of the pool of water from the ocean. And as she looks around, it looks the same, but there's a different feeling. Something's wrong. Something doesn't feel right. And as she looks around on the platform, she notices wet footprints. The wet footprints are walking. And they're walking away from the pool where Mello is guarding the entrance. Mello can see that it goes past the structure. And the structure is kind of glowing right inside the entryway. She's scared because she can feel it. The goosebumps are raising on her arm. Her hairs are straight up and down. She can feel it on the back of her neck, like a whisper. Run, swim away, get away. She can feel it on the back of her neck, telling her, something's telling her to get out and to run. And as she's looking over at the building, and the light is shiny, she sees a dark figure go across the light. She knows something is there, and it's watching her. She knows this isn't good for her to be here, and she doesn't really know what to do. Miss Z told her to protect the entrance, but she left to save Buzz. And now something is in the underwater realm. She decides to lower herself in the water. And when she lowers herself in the water, there was a bright light that blanketed over the whole entrance. And now, when she tries to lift back up to go back in, it's like there's a roof. She can't get through. The entrance has been sealed. And Mello, not really knowing what to do, starts to swim out of the entrance. She could feel a little shiver as she gets out and away from the underwater realm. She must find Miss Z. She must find her now. Miss Z will know what to do. She swims to the surface, and she can see the ship. She can see a current behind the ship. It's the invisible island. She swims up to the ship where she sees the captain, Sunshine, as she always calls her, because as she looks at Sunshine's face, she knows that everything's going to be okay. She looks up at Sunshine and shouts, "Where is Miss Z? Where is Miss Z?" Sunshine says, "The last I left her, she was on the island, the invisible island." Mello swims over to the invisible island, and she says to Miss Z, "Something evil has gotten into the underwater realm." Miss Z looked back at her and said, "I know. I felt it the moment it got to the underwater realm. It seems familiar to me, this shift, this power that has now blocked us from getting in there. It seems very familiar." Miss Z says, "I can get into the underwater realm. Mello, what I need you to do is I need you to follow the ship and make sure that it arrives safely at the castle. The island is going to follow, and it's going to stay right around the castle now." There was something about, as Sparky moved the ship away from the island, that the island's current and the island must follow. All of a sudden, Miss Z left, just disappeared into thin air. Miss Z arrives in the underwater realm, standing right about the spot that the wet footprints were at. Miss Z looked over and noticed the light in the structure. She noticed the figure walking in front of the light. That figure seemed very familiar to her. She has no recollection. It's just a familiarness to this figure. She is not scared of anything. Miss Z is not scared. She knows that this time was coming. She knew that this was going to be happening. She doesn't know the outcome. She only knows that she must do what she must do. She lifts her hand up. She lights up the hallway in front of the light so that she could see the figure. She started to walk closer. She couldn't believe her eyes. As she got closer, the figure turned and looked at her. It was so incredible, so crazy. How could this even be? The figure in front of her looked just like her. It was as if it was her twin. The hair was dark black. Miss Z's hair is blonde. There were scars on the forehead of this figure. And as they looked each other dead in the eyes, Miss Z knew she needed to speak. And Miss Z said, "What creature are you?" And there was a long pause. And the creature turned and looked straight back at Miss Z and said, "I am your creature. I am part of you. I am the black shards, and I'm looking for them." And just as Miss Z's tiara with the stone started to glow, the person looking back at Miss Z's tiara started to glow. And Miss Z took a few steps back because it was hot, like a poker, like a hot poker. She could feel it burning. She could feel it burning her forehead. She opened up her arms, and her cape turned into a huge wall in front of her and that figure that looked like her. She knew she had to jump. She knew she had to get away. She didn't know what strange magic this creature might have. Remember, she is the most powerful wizard in all of the 7 realms, but the underwater realm is not one of those realms. All of the 7 realms are all above the water. Her power doesn't seem to work. It's as though this creature is absorbing Miss Z's power. Miss Z starts to transform and escapes out of the underwater realm to the surface. She's not quite sure what she's going to do about this. Mello meets up with Miss E on the island. Maritza stops the ship and lowers the anchor, jumps off the ship, heads towards the island. It's time for a meeting. We don't know what's happening. They're all together. Miss Xena reports and says what's going on. This is happening. Komoji is ready for a fight. Komoji says, let's go down there. Let's take care of this. Let's get it under control. Miss Xena says, no, we need to wait. We need to find out some information. Buzz, 3 oldest creatures on this invisible island right now. You've got Katsu, the oldest living creature that was indigenous to the 7 realms. You have Miss Xena, Miss E, who was formed by 2 asteroids colliding together, breathing life into her. And you have Buzz, the very first dragon ever made. And they're talking about what Miss E has seen. Me and Komoji and Brooke, Lady Brooke, are talking about what could we do? How can we fight? I've got Sparky, I've got Sam. We all want to devise a plan. But the only one who can get into the underwater realm right now is Miss E. She's the only one who could transport herself there to this underwater realm. So as we're all on the island, on the beach, talking about this, Buzz says, I have an idea, but it could be very risky. We need Sparky. We need Sparky to shrink, to fit into the cloak of Miss E, so that we can get Sparky. Miss E says that is too risky. This person looked like me. I feel that they're the evil side of what I represent for the 7 realms. This is what all of the stories that we've heard about have talked about. And Buzz says, at the tavern there's a book. I'm going to fly home and grab that book, because I feel that it tells of a tale about this underwater realm, and maybe avenues that we can get into it. Buzz flies home as fast as she can, grabs that book, and heads back to the island. But what happened next to Buzz was so unexpected. Because Buzz had that shard in her shoulder, she had some black magic in her scale. The creature in the underwater realm could feel it and sent its will for Buzz to do its bidding. Buzz gets back to the island, and no one knows what just happened. And as they're talking about what's going to happen next and how we're going to get down into this underwater realm, all of us together, Maritza says to Messina, "We can take my ship. My ship has a magical spot that would allow it to go underwater." And Mello says, "You can't. It's blocked off. There's no way in through that way." So what they decide is they all get on the ship. Maritza goes down into her cabin and brings up this glass ball, just a glass ball. And she takes that glass ball and she puts her hand over it in the middle of the ship. And she goes like this over and over again. And the ball gets larger and larger and starts to surround the ship. And everybody's on the ship. The ball sinks the ship underwater. Mello follows the ball down. And now the ship is underwater next to the underwater realm. Now that they're close enough and they now can see all the mystical, magical creatures. And all of them are starting to glow. And they're glowing. And they're glowing evil. The twin of Messina is now making them be evil. Remember what can happen if those magical, mystical creatures get to the surface. All will be lost. What we noticed was Sparky. Sparky seemed to be very upset. Something seemed to be happening that only Sparky could feel. Only Sparky knew. Sparky wanted to escape out of this bubble. Sparky shouldn't be in here. Messina could see how upset Sparky was. Sam knew it too. There wasn't enough grapes in Sam's satchel to be able to calm Sparky down. Sam jumped on top of Sparky. Messina knew what she needed to do. Messina held her hands up grabbed a hold of Sparky in her magical hands and pushed Sparky out through the bubble. As Sparky released through the bubble and is now underwater, we could see coming down towards Sparky Thane. Thane is swimming right towards Sparky, right towards the underwater realm. I don't know what's happening. It's as though Thane is in a trance. I think the evil Miss Z is trying to capture Thane. Sam realized this is what was happening. Buzz, who is under the evil's control, knew it too. But Buzz was trapped in the bubble with Miss Z and put him in control with the arms of Sparky. Sparky starts moving towards the water away from the underwater realm. Thane is fighting with Sparky, fighting. I don't know what's going to happen. How is this going to be solved? Thane is trying to get to the underwater realm. Sparky is moving Thane out of the water, holding Thane back. Sparky holds Thane down. Thane is trying to get away, Okay, there we go. What's gonna happen? I don't know. OMG! OMG! I love it, you guys! Heck yeah!